Ian's story, take one.
My story, take one.
Great.
My name's Ian and I'm adopted. I was born in Waihi Maternity Hospital in 1946 and adopted out when I was about 5.5 months old.
Waihi is a small town on the east coast of New Zealand. Ian currently lives in Arawa in Taonga.
Ian.
Oh, hi Alex.
Oh yeah, you
Good to see you. My earliest memories would be sitting up on a high chair in the kitchen eating lamb's brains for breakfast, lunch or dinner. I was raised in Nio, which is a suburb of Wellington. My relationship with my parents seemed to be fine. I don't think I had any issues. I didn't think at any time that maybe something was amiss with our relationship. It was just normal to me. I didn't know any difference. No.
Ian wasn't aware he was adopted until much later in life. His adoption was closed, which for many in the 1940s was the norm. However, what was unusual was his adoption was kept a secret for most of his life. For Ian, during his early childhood years, he just felt like any other child.
I think when I was adopted out, my adoptive parents probably decided that maybe I shouldn't know about it. Just sort of hide everything and hope that I'd never find out. Life seemed to be quite normal with me, as normal as could be. Adoption never seemed to spring up in my mind at all, virtually never. My adoptive mother, she used to work in government. At one time she was secretary to the Prime Minister in the 40s. But when I came along, I guess she had to quit work. My dad was a travelling salesman, and before he was married, they both lived in Christchurch. When he came to Wellington, he got a job. This was a commission-only job with a stationery company. I think he probably got into the business at the right time because he did very well for himself. He had some quite high-flying customers, people that he dealt with around Wellington.
For Ian, his first clue that his childhood wasn't straightforward came in the form of his birth certificate. The question of why he was born in Waihi stayed in the back of his mind. Somehow, the story did not ring true.
My original birth certificate had that I was born in Waihi, and we lived in Wellington, so I couldn't really figure out why I was born in Waihi. But I asked my dad at one stage, why was I born in Waihi? Were we on holiday or something? And he said, oh yes, we must have been, I can't remember. So I thought I didn't think at the time, but later on I thought it was a bit funny. I'm sure he would have remembered when his only child was born.
His dad's story of why he was born so far away never made sense. But Ian wouldn't know the real reason for another 28 years. After high school, Ian's passion for cars led him to become a mechanic in Wellington. And it wasn't long before he also found his other passion, Lee.
Yeah, so I was a mechanic in Wellington for 5 years. During that time I met Lee, my future wife. We were at a dance hall in Wellington, which was the place you went to in those days.
My friend's father said, don't go to that dance hall, it's a den of sin.
Really?
Yeah. He was pretty strict. So we went anyway. So that's where it all started. I was in Wellington at college for 2 years, and after that I went home to Te Puke and went flatting in Taonga, near Taonga Hospital, where I did my apprenticeship, and Ian came up a few times and decided he liked the place.
Yeah.
And must have liked me.
Must have liked you. Yeah.
Te Puke is a small town with just over 8,000 people. A town not so far from where they live today in Taonga. It was the late 1960s Lee made the decision to relocate to Taonga, and it wasn't long until Ian decided to move in with her. And after 1 year of living together, Ian and Lee decided to marry.
When I left Wellington, I just packed up everything in my car and drove to Taonga to start a new life up there. I had no reason really to leave Wellington. My parents were probably quite disappointed that I'd left home. But I just jumped in my car and went.
Ian began a new chapter in his life, and soon after, they had 2 children, Gary and Yolande. And when Ian shared with Lee the strange story surrounding his birth certificate, she too began to have her doubts.
I was talking to one of Ian's old neighbours, and she let slip that Ian was adopted. I was stunned. It was like, and she was horrified. She didn't know, and I didn't know if Ian knew. So I had to check out if the facts were correct. So it was quite some time before I could get his father alone, his adoptive father alone, and ask him the question, is it true that Ian's adopted? And he said, yes, but he must never know. So it took some time before I was able to tell Ian. It was 8 years before I could tell him the truth. One day Ian did one of his silly things, and I said to him, I've got something to tell you. And he says, well, I've got something to tell you too.
She grabbed some tissues. I said to her something like, what do you need those for? Are you going to cry or something? And she said,
yeah, maybe you and maybe me too when you hear what I've got to say. And we're just standing there in the kitchen, and he said,
what are you going to tell me? I'm adopted or something?
Yes. And then I said to him, well, what made you say that?
Now, why I said that, I have no idea. It just popped out. It must have been right there, just waiting to pop out, waiting for the opportunity to pop out. So it did.
After hearing the news at 48 that he was adopted, it took a while for Ian to come to terms with the situation. But it wasn't until his adoptive parents passed that he could gain more information about his biological parents. And after the passing of his adoptive dad in 1994, Ian obtained a document that changed everything.
Maybe the first night when I knew I was adopted, all of a sudden I felt very alone, because the people I knew who were my family all of a sudden weren't my family. Yeah, I felt really alone. I just had Lee and the kids, that's all. I knew who they were, but I didn't know who I was.
Ian's daughter Yolande remembers this time well.
I was 18 and I'd already left home, moved to Auckland, and I just got a phone call in my flat one day, and they were like, guess what, Dad's adopted. And I was like, what? But I was really excited. It was just, I guess at 18, it was so exciting, like a mystery, and it was something new, like an adventure. But it was also exciting, the idea, one of my first thoughts that I remember was, oh wow, we might have some family.
So we applied for his actual birth certificate, and it took a couple of weeks to come.
On the birth certificate that we got from social welfare, my name on there was Peter Leslie Chetwin, and my mother her name was Frances Chetwin, and my father was Harry Chetwin.
Armed with the last name, Ian could now begin the search for his biological parents. He started combing the phone book for a match. Amazingly, after a few calls, Ian struck gold, and at the end of the phone was Ted, his half-brother. Ian couldn't believe his luck.
Ted gave us his sister's phone number. He said she will know a lot more about the family, so we phoned her, and it turned out she lived in Raglan.
Ian began to map out where pieces of his family were from, tracing them to the small town of Raglan, only 2 hours away from where they live in Taonga. Through Ted and his half-sister Mavis, Ian quickly learnt that his birth father had sadly passed away several years before. However, his birth mother was very much alive. Finally, Ian had a strong lead to follow.
I phoned my mother and she answered the phone, and I told her who I was, and I said, I think you're my mother, and she said, yes, I am. So that was quite easy, quite unexpected. I didn't think it would go that quite easily. We were on the phone for probably 45 minutes, and I thought, oh, this is great. We're really good on getting on quite well together. We decided we maybe should go and meet her in person. I discovered that she was living in Blenheim with her second husband. So we took a trip to the South Island, and we phoned her when we arrived in Blenheim, and I said to her, can we come and visit sometime soon? And she said, oh, maybe tomorrow. So she was sort of, I think she was putting it off, probably fairly nervous.
We all got in a little car and drove down to the South Island, and it was just, I only just remember being excited, but I'm pretty sure Dad would have been super nervous. But for me, I was just excited, so excited to meet my grandmother, because I mean, another thing is we grew up without any grandmothers, because both of our grandmothers died when I was 5. So we had no grandmothers, so I was just so excited to meet a grandmother as well.
Luckily for my mother, her husband was a great talker and he never stopped talking. So it gave her a lot of excuse. She didn't have to talk, she didn't have to say anything, because he probably answered most of the questions anyway that we had. She was a nervous wreck.
How were you feeling?
Oh, I was probably a bit apprehensive, because I didn't know quite what to expect when we went there, whether she would accept me or whether she would reject me or whatever. But yeah, so I was a bit nervous. We got on fine together.
It wasn't like a grandmotherly meeting. She didn't have that excitement about having grandchildren. So that was, you know, I mean, I don't remember feeling disappointed, but it probably was a bit disappointing that she wasn't particularly interested in meeting us. But she did welcome us into her home and, you know, talked to us and gave us some information. So I'm just glad for that. And that's the only time I ever met her.
I could tell she was nervous, and she bounced up and said she was going to go make a cup of tea in the kitchen. So I went with her and I said, I can see this is quite nerve-wracking for you. And she said, yes. And I said, so if it's easier for you, because there was 4 of us there, if it's easier for you, would you like to meet Ian by himself?
And the next day, her husband picked me up and took me to the house and dropped me off there, and I knocked on the door. She opened the door, she said, come in. So I went in. She said, sit down. So I sat down, and she said to me, what do you think about Maoris? And I said, I've got no problem with Māori. And she said, oh, because it's Māori in the family. But that's all she said. And so we chatted for a while, and I knew at that time, I had a brother, a full brother. And I said to her, why did you give us kids away? And she said, oh, you didn't fit into my plans. So I thought, oh, that was fairly cold and callous, but
Still shell-shocked from meeting his birth mother, Ian tried to digest the news that he was also part Māori. He then started on that quest to find his whānau or more family members.
after the initial meeting with my mother, the only way we communicated was by letter. She would write an occasional letter with not a hell of a lot of information on it. It was just about what the weather was like and what her and her husband were going to be doing today and tomorrow, and that's really about it. Although on one of the letters she did mention that I had a great aunt called Kate Shaw, and she would have lived in Rotorua. So we phoned her, and she was 101 at the time and living in a rest home in Rotorua, just across the road from the golf course. And she told us all sorts of stuff about the family, about my mother. She was well known in the Rotorua area.
His meeting with his great aunt Kate Shaw helped Ian piece together why he was adopted. But more importantly, he could start learning about his heritage, which in Māori culture is prized above all else. His daughter Yolande also helped with the research of his whakapapa. And after hearing Ian's story, I was keen just to see how far back Yolande could trace their heritage.
So your dad had that sense of feeling lonely, but since then connecting now with this whakapapa, how do you think this has now changed those feelings?
For Dad, I think for all of us, it just helps us to acknowledge who we are and understand who we are, and just to feel like we belong somewhere is so amazing and important for us. And especially as Māori, the first thing that someone asks you is, where are you from? And when you don't know, it's just embarrassing and humiliating. So for us just to be able to say, yep, we're from here, that's just so valuable for us. And to know where we're from is what this is about for us. So Makoia Island is an island in the middle of Lake Rotorua, and it's quite a big island, and it's a sacred island, and it's where Te Ngākawiti was taken from, and it's where they also bury the important people of high status from around that area. So it's pretty close to our marae at Awaho, and that's where her and her father were buried, so that was important to us. When I found Te Ngākawiti's parents' names, I didn't know if I would be able to go any further than those people, but I was really amazed when I could find their parents' names and their parents' names, and then we ended up finding Rangiwewehi, which is the name of our ancestor from our sub-tribe. So we're called Ngāti Rangiwewehi, so our tribe is named after him. And then from him it was easy to go all the way back to Tamati Kapua, who's the captain of Te Arawa waka. So he's the first person from our iwi, or our tribe, to come to New Zealand from Hawaii. So I could get all the way back to, once I found Tamati Kapua, I could get all the way back to Hawaii and our ancestors who lived there, which is a generic name really for our ancestral homeland, that a lot of people in Te Arawa think our ancestral homeland is around the Tahitian Islands.
Wow, this family tree is just going to keep on going. And how do you feel this has helped your dad?
I think it's just helped him to have some sense of belonging, and I guess it's like your identity, having a real identity, because for so long he had a kind of pretend identity, and so did we. So for all of us, just to have a real identity, that it was, a genuine thing, and other people could say to me, yep, that's real, those are your ancestors, and yes, those are real people. That was how it helped us, in my opinion, yeah.
This obviously means so much for your father, but what does this mean for you?
For me, it just gave me somewhere to belong, a sense of belonging, to know who I am, to explain some things about myself that I didn't understand before, and then to be able to pass down to my kids and their kids who they are, where they come from, their actual culture, to be able to teach it to them, and for my brother and his kids as well. Yeah, that's why it's important to me.
When my daughter Yolande found out about our Māori heritage, she built a family tree, and I felt very proud of the work that she did on that. She gave me a lot of feeling for my Māori heritage, which I'm very pleased with. The marae I'm connected with is Torimano Marae, which is on the north shore of Lake Rotorua, beside the Oahu River, which is a beautiful spot. It's not every day that you find out that you're part of a different culture. And I'm really pleased with that. I'm really taken in by that culture, and I really feel great that I'm part of that. You know what? I finally felt like I've come home.
Ian's incredible story shows me that it's never too late to connect with your roots. For Ian and Yolande, learning about their heritage has given them a real sense and belonging and pride in their past. It's truly inspirational. And on that note, if you have an adoption story you wish to share, please visit imadopted.org/submit. You can also visit the link below in the description. I'd love to share your journey. And if you want to learn more about us at I'm Adopted, please visit imadopted.org.